Hello again, I'm Cap Daniels. Let's continue reading today from I Am Gypsy, Chapter 7, Monday. You know, my name's not really Granddad. You can call me Cappy. I started out as a deckhand on a tugboat 60 years ago, and I ain't never done nothing else. Was he talking to me? We were sailing north from San Juan, but I didn't know where we were going. It was just him and me, so I guess he must have been talking to me. I worked my way up to deck boss, then to engineer. Man, oh man, did I think I'd made the big time when they made me an engineer. He didn't sell me like KH. He was careful and didn't push me too hard. I was getting old, but I still liked to go sometimes. Although I liked the way he babied me and how he talked to me. Didn't take long for me to hate them old diesels, though. They're noisy and greasy, and damn, it's hot down in them engine rooms. I know exactly how you feel. So I found a stack of books about how to navigate and steer and figure out weather. I read them books about 100 times, and I figured I'd go on up to the pilot house and see if the old man would let me drive a little. They made me an apprentice mate, and he let me steer. He pulled another cigar from his pocket and lit it. I liked the smell even more out on the open ocean. So, what happened next? Oh, yeah, I was telling you about learning to steer. Holy crap, I think he can hear me. It turned out I was pretty good at running the old boat. I knew all about the deck work and the engines, so it made pretty good sense to me. I still don't understand why I'm supposed to call you Cappy. It wasn't long after that, the company made me a captain of an old tug, and I had my own crew. They were a good crew, but they were young and green. We kind of learned the ropes together. I'd teach them what I knew, and they caught on pretty quick. I reckon we surprised a lot of folks. We had the sorriest old tug in the yard, and the greenest crew, and the newest captain. But we sure got a lot of work done. The crew took to calling me Cappy, and it just stuck. He stood and stretched, making sounds like he was falling apart. I liked his stories, and I liked Cappy. He left me on my own devices and went below. When he came back on deck, he had a sandwich and a big bottle of beer. This ain't really beer. It's just a beer bottle. I won't be drinking when we're out here like this. It's just water in a beer bottle. I promise. Here, see for yourself. He poured out a little from the bottle and let it run across my deck and into my scuppers. Sure enough, it was just water. Oh, I guess you probably don't know what scuppers are. They're little slits that let water run off of a boat so the decks and the cockpit won't hold water. We boats are pretty amazing things. I had a pretty good run of it for 60 years or so. I pushed barges and dragged big ships all over the world. I guess you and me have got a little in common. I ain't never seen any place that wasn't touching the water. Have you? No, I didn't know there are places that don't touch the water. That just seems weird. You know, Gypsy, maybe the parts of the world that don't touch the water are better. But I guess we'll never know, will we? No, Cappy, we probably won't. And that's okay with me. Yeah, that's just fine with me. If it ain't salty, I ain't interested. We sailed on, stopping most nights so Cappy could sleep. He was a good sailor, and he took good care of me. We finally made it all the way to Panama City, Florida, not too far from where I was born. It was a lot different than the Caribbean, but I liked life there with Cappy. I got to meet a lot of his old crew. Blisterfoot was my favorite. He didn't wear shoes, and I like people who don't wear shoes. Believe it or not, he had a guitar. "You old barefoot fool, what are you doing here?" "Hey, Cappy, it's good to see you too. Can I come aboard?" "If you brought rum, you can." Blisterfoot held up a bottle of Captain Morgan and climbed over my starboard lifeline. They talked and drank and laughed about how things used to be. "How long's it been, Cappy?" "Oh, I don't know. 15 minutes or 15 years. It's all the same to me anymore." Blisterfoot said, "Yeah, I know exactly what you mean." He picked up his guitar, strummed a few chords, and started to sing. 15 minutes or 15 years. It's all hard to tell the difference, and nobody cares anymore. That's when another guy showed up with an old beat-up guitar with only 5 strings. "Hey, you mind if I sit in and pick a little?" "Sure, come on up. I'm Blisterfoot, and this here's Cappy." "Nice to meet you both. I'm Charlie. I used to write a little music back in the day." Charlie came up, and he made the poor old 5-string guitar sing. He told stories about writing songs with Elvis and how his brother was a big country music star. People came strolling by on the dock, and some of them waved and spoke, but some of them stopped and sang along when they knew the words. It was marina life, and it was a good life for Cappy and me. I spent a lot of time thinking about what I'd seen and heard in my life. I often wondered where my first family, Thomas, Terry, and Tina, was, and if I'd ever see them again. I thought about Knothead and Penelope and their 2 beautiful daughters, Courtney and Ocean. I hoped they liked living in their house and having their job on the resort. Something made me think they probably wish they were still living on a boat and making deals with an octopus who trades lobster for broken shells. What a time we had. That's when I saw Papa, and I knew something was wrong. His name wasn't really Papa, but he looked like the pictures of Ernest Hemingway I'd seen, so I thought of him as Papa. He had a big white beard, and he was always seemed to be in charge. That sounds a lot like Hemingway, don't you think? Anyway, he was the harbor master, and he was walking the docks wearing a look I didn't like. He was frowning, and his brow was wrinkled as if he just couldn't find anything to be happy about. "Hey, Cappy," he yelled as he approached. Cappy stuck his head out of my companionway. "Oh, hey, Greg. How's it going this morning?" "Not so good, Cappy." "You been listening to the weather?" "Yeah. I listened yesterday, but I've slept since then. There was a little tropical storm twisting up down south of Cuba. That's the only thing I heard." "Yeah, well, it's run itself into a hurricane, and it's headed this way. You got a plan?" Cappy turned and eyed the sky to the south. If the storm was still south of Cuba, it had a long way to come to get to Panama City, but that didn't stop Cappy from trying to see some sign of it in the sky. A hurricane, you say? I don't like the sound of that." "Yeah, you probably ought to come up with a plan," said Papa. "Let me know if you need anything. I'm going to wake up the rest of the old guys." "Good luck to you," said Cappy. "Yeah, you too." Cappy turned and looked back toward the south and chewed on the corners of his bottom lip. A hurricane," I heard him say with a raspy hint of concern. I'd heard about hurricanes, and I knew they were bad, but I'd never actually seen one. I knew Cappy would know what to do. We'd be safe. He flipped on the VHF radio and tuned into the NOAA weather broadcast. Papa had been right. It was a Category 1 hurricane, and it was moving north at 14 knots. It was expected to become a Category 3 by the time it made landfall. I didn't know exactly what that meant, but I knew that 130-mile-per-hour wind was going to suck. I heard Cappy on the phone trying to find a boatyard who had room to haul me out and put me up on blocks where I'd be safe. I didn't like the sound of that at all. It sounded painful to me, but I trusted Cappy. It turned out not to matter, since all the boatyards were either full or had run out of stands. Boats started leaving the marina, and everybody looked scared. People were boarding up windows and taking everything that wasn't tied down off the docks. "I'll be back, Gypsy. Don't you worry. I'm not going to let anything happen to you." Cappy hopped onto the dock as if he were 25 years old again and headed up the ramp. I didn't know where he was going, but he wasn't abandoning me. He wouldn't do that. When he came back, he had 2 buckets of chain, a huge anchor, and a bunch of bottled water. He lugged everything aboard and went to work. He worked all day rigging my new anchor and chain and taking down my canvas and sails. Apparently, he didn't want anything to get blown off when that hurricane came. He never turned the radio off. It just kept repeating the same ominous forecast over and over until the monotonous recording changed. Everyone on the dock and nearby boats froze. Hurricane Michael, now a Category 2, is expected to make landfall between Destin and Apalachicola as a Category 3 hurricane with winds in excess of 120 miles per hour. Storm surge of 8 to 10 feet possible, with damaging flooding likely. Residents are encouraged to evacuate or seek shelter. Cappy patted my mast with his calloused hand. "Don't worry, old girl. I'll be right here with you." He went back to work, making sure there was nothing loose in my rigging that could give away during the storm. He provisioned the lockers with enough water and food to last for weeks. I was starting to get scared. I had faith that Cappy would protect me, but even he looked concerned. By the time Cappy had done everything he could to get me ready to move out of the marina, my barometer had started acting strange. The barometric pressure was dropping like a rock. Something nasty was on its way. It was eerie to see all the other boats leaving the marina. I wondered where they were going, and I wondered if they were scared too. "We've got quite an adventure ahead of us there, Gypsy. Let's get some sleep while we can, old girl." Cappy crawled into my forward cabin that night, but I don't think he ever got to sleep.